This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, other holders. Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome to another Sports Catastrophe birthday boy. And the birthday boy for today, August the 2nd, is deceased, but he was a major player in the college football world. He played in the NFL too, but the fact of the matter is that he was well known for winning the Heisman and having one of the greatest plays in college football history, and they still talk about it 65 years later. Anyway, he was actually the first pick in the NFL draft and picked in the AFL draft as well. And then there was a contract dispute that ended in court, and he decided to play in the AFL until he went to the NFL for one season. So anyway, he had an interesting position and all that to do with a lot of things after his career started. But anyway, Billy Cannon, that's the guy's name, was born August 2nd, 1937 in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Yeah, that's weird how Philadelphia is in Mississippi, where we all know it's in uh, Pennsylvania. So anyway, the family would move to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where his father worked during World War II. He attended high school and did well in high school and all that. Unfortunately, though, Cannon would have a 90-day suspended sentence for theft after he and some friends were caught extorting money from men who they had seen with prostitutes. Well, it's a noble cause to say, well, you shouldn't do this stuff with prostitutes, but it was wrong in a sense. Anyway, despite his problems off the field, Cannon was recruited by many college teams to play football. Florida and Ole Miss were looking good to get him and all that. After all, he was born in Mississippi, but he was raised in Louisiana. He chose LSU because of the fact that they offered a job between semesters at a local car dealership. Other colleges did not guarantee a job. And Cannon's mother said he should remain close to home. So anyway, as a sophomore in 1957, of course, as a freshman, you're not allowed to play in the NCAA under the conditions of that time. So he was a sophomore. He shared the backfield with the legendary Jim Taylor, who was a great Green Bay runner back in the day. He also was a defensive back, Cannon was, and the team's punter. He was a star for the team, putting up 140 yards on 8 carries against Bama. He looked pretty impressive and all that. Texas Tech was just basically focused solely on Jim Taylor, but then it made Billy Cannon just put up a great job and all that. LSU ended up 5-5, which was decent, but they were not going to a bowl game anytime soon. Well, lack of bowl games and plus a 5-5 mark, you couldn't do it. So anyway, Coach Paul Diesel in 1958 had a method to keep his players fresh during games. He had a 3-platoon system, split the team into 3 platoons: the go team, the white team, and the politically incorrect at the time Chinese Bennett. The white team would be the starting unit for the Tigers, led by Cannon, who was held on offense and defense. Cannon was given more time on offense because of Jim Taylor graduating to the NFL. LSU had talent and depth, and won their first 5 games by at least 3 touchdowns. The 6th game was against Florida, and LSU survived them. They would move to number 1 in the polls and would remain on top of subsequent polls as it finished the regular season undefeated. It was named national champion by the AP and UPI. LSU would beat Clemson in the Sugar Bowl as Cannon would throw a touchdown pass and kick the extra point. So they did it. They won the championship. The national championship, and he was the first team All-American. He finished 3rd in Heisman Trophy when we had Pete Dawkins and Randy Duncan. A lot of people were shocked that Cannon would not win the Heisman in 1958. Some say it was because he was a junior and not a senior, like he still had one more year of school left. And a lot of people said that, they were too good. But I mean, Pete Dawkins of Army. Yeah, Army. How good were they doing all of that? Anyway, so he came back in 1959, which was good for a lot of people because, they were expecting to. So they expected to compete for another national title. LSU was ranked number one, and season ticket holders tripled. LSU won 6 straight games without allowing touchdowns, so they were even better. Cannon showed his versatility, leading the team on offense, had a pick six, and averaged 40 yards per punt. LSU would face Ole Miss in a tight match. Both teams were undefeated, and it was Halloween night at Tiger Stadium in LSU, in which Cannon held out number one LSU take on number three Ole Miss. The Tigers were down 3-0 when Cannon took a punt and zigzagged his way 89 yards for a touchdown, breaking 7 tackles, and did it. LSU almost botched it, but Warren Rabb made a game-saving tackle on 4th down at the 1-yard line, and LSU survived 7-3. Cannon was shocked and all that, but yeah, LSU would lose to Tennessee. They went for 2 and botched it. A tie would have maybe helped their national title hopes. They lost to Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl, 21-0 at St. Revenge. Nevertheless, Cannon was given the Heisman winning with 519 first place votes. Second place, Richie Lucas, played for Penn State at quarterback, got 98 votes. A lot of people were convinced that because of his play on Halloween night, that was enough to convince the voters and all of that. He was only the second player in the SEC from the SEC to win the Heisman over Frank Sinkwich in 1942. So, of course, the SEC were not as powerhouses as they are nowadays. So, Cannon actually signed a contract with the Rams in the NFL. It would be for 3 years for $30,000. 2 months later, he actually signed another contract on the field at the Sugar Bowl, but that was to the American Football League's Houston Oilers. So a lot of people were shocked that he would sign a contract for both leagues and all of that. Houston owner Bud Adams, offered Cannon $33,000 a year with a $10,000 signing bonus and would give him a catalog for his dad. The Rams were upset that Cannon was bound by their contract and could not sign with Houston, but the judge ruled against the Rams, saying that the contracts were void, and that Pete Rozelle, who was the LA Rams GM, who soon became the commissioner of the NFL for 29 years, took advantage of Cannon's naivete and all of that. The AFL's victory in that court case actually brought legitimacy to the fledgling league. Cannon decided to play in the AFL for the Oilers, making him the first $100,000 player. He would join the newly formed Oilers and was heckled on by opposing players because he was the highest player in pro football. But he could not get around with the coach, Rankus. Even though he did lead the team in rushing with 644 yards and caught 5 touchdown passes. He had a big touchdown catch from George Blanda in the 1960 AFL Championship game that helped Houston win the first AFL title, and he was named MVP. Houston went under Wally Lamb after Rankus was fired. Cannon put up 373 all-purpose yards and 5 touchdowns. All-purpose yards is running yards, receiving yards, passing yards, and return yards, or kickoff and punt return. He put up 216 rushing yards, which set an AFL record. All that. He was the AFL rushing champion with 948 yards. The Oilers would still be AFL champions, and Cannon again was the game's MVP. Unfortunately, he injured his back in a game in 1962, which affected his performances. Houston would go to the championship game against Dallas, who would soon become Kansas City. But anyway, it was the matchup. And that 1962 matchup was the famous one in which Abner Hayes, legendary Kansas City running back who died recently, actually said that they would kick to the clock. Unfortunately, he said the word kick, and Kansas City had to kick to Houston. Well, sorry, Dallas had to kick to Houston. Fortunately for the Texans, Houston couldn't score and ended up going to double overtime. Cannon would miss a lot of the '63 season with lingering back problems. Cannon figured he would be a hindrance to the team and asked to be let go. And they agreed. They traded him to Oakland before the 1964 season. Al Davis, who was the Raiders head coach at the time, liked Cannon's abilities but couldn't figure out how to use them. So he put him at fullback to catch passes and all that. He had 8 touchdown catches and ran for 3 of them. He would move to tight end. He wanted to be a wide receiver, but because the Raiders had Art Powell and Furky Fred Blendikoff, they needed a tight end. Fortunately, though, he did accept his new role and adapted to it. Before the '66 season, John Rauch would become head coach, making Al Davis the AFL commissioner and the Raiders GM. So anyway, Cannon would be a deep threat in the offense and would do quite well. Cannon hoped that the Raiders would win the AFL title. And Cannon actually was instrumental in telling Al Davis to sign George Blanda to kick. Blanda was a former teammate of his with Houston, and to mentor Darryl LaMonica, a quarterback. It worked out. He was productive as a tight end. The Raiders beat the Oilers for the AFL title game, 40-7. And the Raiders went to the Super Bowl, the second Super Bowl against the Packers. Cannon dropped an easy pass in the fourth quarter, which would have given him a touchdown. Nevertheless, Green Bay would have won anyhow. Well, Green Bay won the game 33-14. In 1968, he had a modest season, catching 6 touchdown passes. I knew he wouldn't be in Oakland much longer. John Madden had basically relegated him to decoy routes, and the Raiders would release him in the 1970 preseason. As he was preparing to do postgraduate studies in orthodontics at Loyola University in Chicago, Cannon received a call from Hank Stram because he needed a running back and all that. So he played 6 games for the Chiefs, catching 2 touchdowns, but a season-ending injury made him retire. He still had a good 11-year career. And a lot of people would say, oh, Cannon played in the AFL exclusively. Nope, that was an NFL team. An AFL team, but they were still in the NFL. So, yeah. Anyway, he would marry his high school sweetheart, having 5 kids together. His son, Billy Cannon Jr., played linebacker for Texas A&M, and the Cowboys picked him in the first round of the '84 draft, although he didn't amount to anything. Cannon Sr. would actually complete postgraduate studies at the University of Tennessee during the Oilers' offseason, earning a DDS for Doctor of Dental Studies. He would get orthodontics degrees from Loyola. After retiring from football, he started his own dental practice in Baton Rouge. Unfortunately, though, he was in financial difficulties from bad real estate investments and gambling debts. That will kill you. He was in a counterfeiting scheme, printing $6 million in phony bills. He would serve 2.5 years in prison and all of that. Upon his release, he did regain his dentistry license, but couldn't rebuild it. So the Louisiana State Penitentiary actually hired him as a dentist in 1995. Regardless of that, Cannon reorganized the dental program and it worked out. All of that. And the inmates liked Billy Cannon. All that. So, yeah, Billy Cannon did his job and all of that. So, anyway, Cannon was a legend and all that, despite his legal troubles and all of that. He was still an iconic figure in Louisiana's sports history. A video of his punt return on Halloween week 1959 is still put on the Jumbotron at LSU Stadium for every home game. Cannon was LSU's only Heisman winner until Joe Burrow in 2019. LSU retired his number 20 jersey after the 59 season, making him the first and only LSU player to have a jersey retired until Tommy Casanova in 2009. Anyway, he was given a chance to be in the College Football Hall of Fame, but because of his counterfeiting and all that, it was stripped from him. But in 2008, they allowed him to come back. Yeah, his iconic figure. Unfortunately, though, he died in his sleep May 20th, 2018, at age 80. And LSU fans will really like him for that. I'm an Arkansas fan, and I don't like LSU. But hey, Billy Cannon was a star, and he didn't burn Arkansas. Well, mostly because Arkansas wasn't in the SEC till 1990. But still, he gets a good vote for me. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do